do so.
Anas Sarwar.
Presiding Officer, the promises have not been met, and the families left behind deserve justice, not excuses. Shamefully, new figures show that 573 charges for drug dealing had to be dropped in the last 3 years because the cases were time-barred before reaching court. Hundreds of those accused of drug dealing simply walking free, evading justice, not because they were found innocent, but because of this government's incompetence. People selling poison to their communities given the green light to destroy lives because John Swinney and his tired government can't run a court system that sends drug dealers to prison. 573 drug dealing charges simply dropped. So can John Swinney understand why people will be so angry when they learn that despite one life being lost to drugs every 7 hours in Scotland, hundreds of drug dealers are walking free?
First Minister.
President Officer, the issues in relation to the court service are essentially an implication of the period during COVID in which we had a backlog of cases that had to be addressed. And the court service worked incredibly hard and works incredibly hard to erode those backlogs that we are wrestling with. And significant work has been undertaken because, if I then look at other data, our prisons, as the Justice Secretary reported to Parliament last Thursday, our prisons are incredibly congested, and in many cases by individuals who have been convicted and sentenced for a long period of time as a consequence of their drug-related activities. And we are wrestling within our prison system, admirably by the Scottish Prison Service, with the congestion of many groups that are involved in organised crime, which is underpinning the drugs issue. So I know that the Crown and the Scottish Courts and Tribunal Service are working incredibly hard in an incredibly focused way to make sure that the perpetrators of illegal drug activity in our society are brought to justice, and many of them are.
Anas Sarwar.
Presiding Officer, there is no justification for hundreds of drug dealers walking free because of the incompetence of this SNP government. No justification at all, because this is a government that has lost control. 607 lives lost in just 6 months, 1 every 7 hours, and 573 drug supply charges unpunished, and still not enough access to treatment or residential rehab for those who want to recover. The truth is, John Swinney's approach is failing both victims and communities. Dealers slipping through the cracks, people dying waiting for help, and families losing loved ones and left without hope. 6 years ago, 6 years since they declared an emergency, and still Scotland leads Europe in drugs deaths. John Swinney has abandoned both justice and recovery. So isn't it the case that we will never get to grips with Scotland's drugs death emergency while he and the SNP stay in charge?
First Minister.
President Officer, the Government has taken a focused approach to addressing the drugs issue in our society over a number of years, and a number of significant steps have been taken to address those questions. First of all, I've put on the record the issues around about the expansion of rehabilitation placements, and that progress is being achieved as we committed to doing so. We supported the delivery of the first of the safe consumption rooms, which we know, based on the evidence that is available to us, has saved lives as a consequence of the intervention of the Thistle. We've expanded the rollout of naloxone, which is resulting in significant avoidance of death and injury to individuals who are using drugs. And in addition to that, we are seeing, and I recognise that the levels of drug deaths are far too high, but we are seeing a decrease in the last year of 13% in drugs deaths in Scotland, although we must maintain absolute vigilance and focus to make sure that we continue to make that progress. And finally, on the issue of the criminal justice system, our prison system is absolutely full of individuals, many of whom have been imprisoned because of their drug-related activity. So it is quite simply wrong for Mr Sarwar to suggest that people are not being brought to justice because of their criminal activity, and that will remain the focused priority of the Scottish Government.